All right, so you're nice and settled. You're okay?
I'm ready to go.
All right, so I'll start with the intro and then we'll go from there. Peace and love, family. Welcome back to Keep Firing Offline. I'm your host, D. Taylor. Now, family, if you're joining us for the first time, Keep Firing Offline is an interview series brought to you by D. Taylor Images, where we get up close and personal with amazing people to keep you inspired. To find out more about D. Taylor Images and the Keep Firing brand, be sure to visit dtailorimages.com. Now, today, we have a phenomenal guest with us. She is the former CEO of MetricStream. She currently sits on the board of companies such as Verizon and Nordstrom, and she is the author of the amazing book, Unapologetically Ambitious. She is Shellye Archambeau. Hey, Shellye, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Daryl. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining. I understand that you are a busy person. You're always on the go, have so many things to do. So I greatly appreciate you taking the time to share this, time and space with me. So really appreciate you, and I do not take that for granted at all.
Well, you're very welcome. Happy to do it.
So Shellye, as you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and at Keep Firing, we are definitely advocates of mental health. So can I ask, what space do you find yourself in these days? How are you?
Oh, thanks for asking. Right now, I'm in a good place, and
Okay.
I feel very fortunate for that.
Gotcha. So do you have any little tips and tricks when it comes to managing your mental health?
Yes. So I learned a long time ago that self-care is really important to me, because I literally almost burn out and
Mm,
was like, okay, I don't think any of this is really worth it if this is how hard it's going to be and how I'm going to feel and everything else. And fortunately, I sought help, which I actually talk about in the book, because I
yes.
think it's really important for people to know that it is okay to ask for help wherever and whenever you need it. But yeah, I was in my late 20s and I was married, had two kids. I'd
Mm-hmm.
already been promoted a couple times on the job. I was just getting my first nonprofit board. I was active in the
Mm,
community, and I was exhausted, and I was feeling low energy, and I didn't want to get out of bed. And I'm like, what is wrong? Because from the outside, it all looks great, right? I
mm-hmm.
mean, Shelley's got it all going on, and on the inside, I'm just like, oh, if this is what it's like, I don't know if I want this life.
Yeah.
Um, and I went to see a psychologist who, after sessions, basically had me realize that I was giving 100% of myself away.
Mm,
Everybody else, kids, husband, family, right? Community, whatever, boards, company, everybody was getting it. And I wasn't doing anything to feed myself.
mm.
So thank goodness I had that experience then, because I learned what I need to do to take care of myself. And I've never had that problem again.
Mm, gotcha. And that's actually a great segue into the first question that I have for you. But before I get there, and talking about the book, I mentioned to you before we started recording that I had a little dilemma in preparing for the interview. And the dilemma that I had, which is a good problem to have, is that there is so much covered in this book. There's so many little gems. There's so many levels and layers to your story. And I'm like, wow, what do I cover? Like, what do I ask? Even up until last night, I'm like, oh, do I bring that one up? So you definitely gave us as readers a lot to think about and consider when it comes to our own personal lives, our own careers, and that is really a blessing. So in terms of the segue, I wanted to ask you first, you wear a lot of hats, as a mom, as a wife, as a professional, but when you get up in the morning, before you put those hats on, and when you go to bed, before you take or after you take those hats off, who is Shellye?
Mm. Well, Shelley is a woman who is very driven.
Mm-hmm.
I am someone who wants to be helpful to others. I am someone who wants to make an impact at whatever level that is, work, home, family, etc. And I'm someone who wants to earn people's respect.
Mm-hmm.
I am someone who likes to have fun. I like to play. Uh, and gosh, what else would I say about me? I'm a family person at my
Yes.
core.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be some things I would say.
Gotcha. And so, just jumping into the book, as the story opens, you were just mentioning that you're a family person, and it starts with a story from when you were a child around Christmas time, and your father had to pull off sort of a Christmas miracle. And you set him up a little bit, and so I'll let the readers, read that for themselves. But it required your father to be tenacious, to a certain degree, and to not take no for an answer. So would you say that you get your tenacity from your father?
Oh my goodness, it has to be from both. Both,
Okay.
both of my parents were very tenacious, didn't take no for answers when it was something that they needed or their family needed. So I got that from both.
Hmm. Gotcha. And so you decided early on as a teenager that you were going to shoot for becoming a CEO. And later in the book, you reference sacrifices versus choices, which brings in, what you received from your mother. So in terms of your journey to become a CEO, one of the things that struck me is that you had this plan laid out, right? And it was based on what had been proven to be successful in becoming a CEO. But what struck me about it is that a lot of people, I believe, they get caught up in each step to whatever they want to achieve and whether or not the step is something that they enjoy. But that didn't seem to be a big thing for you. It's like, okay, if I have to go into sales, I'm going to go into sales. If I have to go into marketing, I'm going to go into marketing. So would you consider yourself more of a big picture thinker in that, once you set your sights on the goal, that's what you follow in order to achieve that goal, and it doesn't matter so much whether or not you're going to enjoy every step.
Yes, I'm a big believer in keeping your eye on the prize.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I'm trying to do? And therefore, what skills, experience, background, whatever, knowledge, relationships, what do I need to be able to go get that? It's not that every single one of those jobs or relationships or that I have to be like the perfect thing and
Right.
something I totally love. No, to me, it's just like when you go to college, right? You take a lot of classes that you love. You take some
Mm-hmm.
classes that, you really don't care for too much, and maybe one or two that you just really can't stand. But guess what? You take them all. Why do you take them all? Because that is the formula for how you can go get your degree, to get the foundation that's required, right, upon which you can build things. And I see careers the same way. So, no, I'm not going to optimize for the individual job because that's not where I plan to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to optimize for the goal and take the jobs and roles that set me up for that and learn what I need to from it and then move on. The key is just don't be in that job very long, right? Do
Mm-hmm.
the job, do it well, learn what you need to learn, and move on. Um, but I think that's one of the mistakes. Honestly, just can I tell you a quick side, Daryl?
Sure.
Something that really irks me is how many, especially students, even young professionals, are told, oh, do what you love.
I was going to bring that up.
Do what you love? What?
Uh-huh.
I mean, first of all, how do you even know what you love?
True.
Your whole experience frame is so small, right? Only a few years, and if you haven't even been working, you don't even know what these jobs really are. And two, it's not like the job you're going to go get is the one that you're going to have for 50 years, right? When
Mm.
you go do what you love, I'm not going to stay in that job. No, I'd much rather they tell people set yourselves up so that you can do what you love, right? Prepare to do what you love. There's so many other ways to say it, but this whole notion of do what you love now, but so much stress. I see so many young professionals that are kind of like, oh my God, I don't know what I love. And therefore, should I do this or should I do that? And they get stuck with it.
Yes.
I don't know what I, no, don't worry about what you love. All right.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too soon to worry about what you love. Just worry right now about how do you build skills? How do you build capability and experiences that set you up for ultimately, right, where you might want to
Mm-hmm.
go. And if you don't know where you want to go, then I tell people all the time, then don't worry about that job is. Pick something that's in demand. If you don't know what you want to do, pick something that is in
Yeah.
demand. Why? Because now you'll build skills that are in demand. And as you build those skills, if you decide, oh, that's not the company, it's not the industry, it's not whatever, I can now pivot because I've got skills that are in demand.
Yeah.
Right? So again, treat it like college. You take core courses until you figure out what you want to major in. Do the same thing. Just don't stop. Don't go back and forth. Keep moving forward, building up.
Yes, yes, and that actually brings up something that I wanted to bring up. My therapist says that he says commonly that control is an illusion, and so I wanted to ask you about kind of the delicate dance between control and flexibility. And I was watching the documentary about the college admissions scandal the other night. And there
Mm.
was this part where they were talking about how so many students are focused on getting into pretty much the same schools. And so not everybody can get in. And so when they find out that, or if they find out that they don't get in, it's like crushing for them. So I think a lot of times we put all this pressure on ourselves to be able to control our journey and do this one specific thing, whatever the case may be. And so in your story, although you had a pretty, specific plan, there were moments that you had to be flexible too. So could you tell me about that kind of that dance between a goal, control and flexibility and what that has meant for you?
Sure. So, as I said earlier, the goal is like the prize, right?
Right.
Where is it I'm heading? Where is it I'm trying to get to? The different decisions you make along the way, what company, what job, what industry, all those things are just steps to help you move forward. And yes, I always put a plan in place, right? I
Mm-hmm.
set a goal. I ask myself, what has to be true for me to achieve the goal, which means I have to
Right.
go do the research, right? If I want to be CEO, okay, who are the CEOs? What were their skills? What education did they have? What kind of jobs did they have? What kind of, I did all this research and said, okay, if this is what has to be true, and how do I make it true for me? And that becomes my plan. So I
Mm.
always have a plan. Now, does the plan always go as expected? No. When I started working at IBM, I was going to go be CEO of IBM,
Right.
but you didn't introduce me as the former CEO of IBM, right? So that didn't
Right.
happen. I still made CEO though, because
Yeah.
CEO was the ultimate goal. So as you figure out what it is that you want to do, yes, build a plan, but things won't always go exactly according to plan. And then you
Mm.
just pivot, right? That's the time to say, okay, it's just like driving. You get in your car, you're heading to the grocery store. Okay, you hit a roadblock, construction. You don't stop your car and park it and wait until they finish.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't turn around and go back home because you can't get there that way. What
Right.
do? You figure out another route. You pull up GPS, and sometimes a little longer, sometimes over a bumpy road. Sometimes you have to go across a median. I mean, there are all kinds of things you have to do sometimes,
Right.
but you still go to the store. The key
Yeah.
is pick your goal. Stay focused on the goal. Do not let these little things stop you. Just figure out a different way under it, around it, through it, right? Get help, all those things
Mm-hmm.
that you're driving. So when you talk about the flexibility is the plan can change. Plan can
Mm-hmm.
pivot. That's fine. All right. But don't give up on the plan just because you hit a roadblock or a hurdle.
Right.
And don't make a plan, write it down, put it over there on the corner, and then like not pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of
Yeah.
people do that too. Very few people. A lot of people make goals. Some people put plans in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I find, Daryl, that very few people make decisions every day consistent with their plan.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk to you about confidence as well, because another thing that struck me as I was reading the book is that I had to remember how young you were through a lot of these stories. You were like in your mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s, and you're in an industry where there aren't very many people that look like you. So, you don't have a direct model that you can look at and say, you know what, I can do it because I can see somebody like me that's done it. And in your story, you were often the odd person out. As a kid, you were, the only black girl, oftentimes. And then even, once you were able to develop relationships with other black people, there were, there was some separate, no, I wouldn't call it separation, but you weren't always exposed to like culture and things like that. So in those types of situations, it can be difficult to find confidence because you always find yourself as being the odd person out. So how did you develop your confidence?
Well, honestly, the first step was I faked it.
Mm.
I acted like I was confident because I wasn't. I suffered from imposter syndrome my whole life. So there was always that voice in my head saying, wait till they figure out that you're not as smart as they think you are, right? Wait till
Right.
they know or realize that you don't know as much as they even think you know. What makes you think you can do this, right? That voice, that imposter syndrome that so many of us hear and face, I had it in spades.
Mm.
So What did I do? Well, a couple of things. One, I tried to surround myself with people who actually built me up,
Mm-hmm.
who actually reminded me that, hey, I can do what I want to do, right? That I do have capability, that I am smart, right? All those things. Because I wasn't strong enough to do it all myself. So I need people to remind me when I was starting to feel like, ooh, maybe not, maybe can't, right? So that was one. And then the other was trying to believe in others. Because the only time you tend to feel like, ooh, this is imposter syndrome's coming,
Mm-hmm.
is when somebody's offering you something new. Think about it, a
Right.
new job, a new role, speaking in front of a group, becoming part of a club or an organization, right? Something new, and you're like, ooh, do I belong? Can I do this, right? Etc. Well, just remember, and I used to have this little mantra, but just remember, they would only offer it to you or only ask you to do it if they believe you can do it.
Bingo.
If I can't believe in myself, at least believe them when they
Right.
ask.
Right. Right. Gotcha. And I guess on that same note, I wanted to talk a bit about racism because there was one, and I'll excuse me if I'm looking to my left here, but I have a couple of notes. And so there's one passage in the book where you talked about your family's approach to racism in a way, where it says, "In my family, we did not complain about unfairness. In particular, we were not allowed to believe that being African American was holding us back. My parents made this choice, I would later learn, because they didn't want us to focus on the systemic racism all around us, to start finding it everywhere, and to limit our goals because of it. If we did that, they believed it would, or really would, hold us back. By not allowing us to use racism as an excuse, my parents hoped to empower us to overcome it. This isn't a choice parents should have to make for their children, but life isn't fair." I find that passage to be pretty timely, especially now, because there's been so many conversations about systemic racism. Even up to our vice president, and a senator making comments about whether or not America is a racist country. So I guess my question there is that strategy that your family passed along to you, is it something that you still carry to this day in your daily life, even as all these conversations about race continue to, be even more heightened as days go on?
Yeah. So I'll talk about it in two frames.
Okay.
So one is I don't, when it's happening to me or when I feel like that's what I'm experiencing, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I try to reframe things.
Okay.
So I get slights all the time. And I know a lot of people do for all kinds of different reasons. A woman, somebody who's of color, right? Somebody who might have a different sexual orientation, someone who's an immigrant, right? We all get slights. People say things, digs, undercurrents, right? All that kind of stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you let all that stick when it happens, I mean, I don't even know how you can move. It's just so heavy and it's so
Right.
much. So the key is don't let it stick, right? The key to remember is they don't know you. They
Hmm.
don't know you. So if they don't know you, they don't have a right to judge you, right? So if they
Yeah.
don't have a right to judge you, then why are you listening or accepting? They
Yeah.
don't know you. So I try to, when stuff happens, right? I reframe it. For instance, gosh, and I'll get stuff all the time. I'll hear, oh, you're on the Verizon board. Oh, it's great. They're focused on diversity.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think they mean by that, right?
Yeah, that you're only there because.
Yeah, so you could take it as, okay, they think I'm not qualified, and therefore the only reason I'm there is because I happen to be, and I'm not even sure, black, because I'm a woman, because I'm a black woman. I mean, who knows,
Right.
right? But
Right.
anyway, so I could take that as a slight and feel down about it, right? Okay, they don't think I'm just. I don't. When people say stuff like that, I reframe it. You poor person. This is what I'm thinking in my head. You poor person. You feel so threatened by the fact that I got this role and you didn't, that you feel it's necessary to make me feel bad about it?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a shame? I just feel
Mm-hmm.
so sorry for you. All
Yeah.
right? Reframe. So I had to learn to reframe. I mean, all through my life, reframe stuff. Because honestly, that way, slides off. This is not about me. This is about you.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry you are in a position where you feel the need to do or say something like that. but you don't know me.
Yeah.
So reframing allows that stuff to slide off like Teflon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that way I'm not carrying it all and not carrying it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I think that's important. So I talk about how I deal with it. That's how
Mm-hmm.
I deal with it when it's coming and directed at me.
Okay.
If it's something that's creating a barrier because of whatever, then I might have to take actual action against stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
in general. But when it comes to actually talking about racism, that's
Mm-hmm.
different. In the boardroom, yes, bring up racism. When George Floyd happened, yes, we had conversations in the boardroom about this. Yes, I wrote op-eds. Yes, I used my voice and my platform to try to help, to make a difference, to educate, all those things. So no, I don't shy away from the topic. I
Mm-hmm.
see it as two different things. One is very personal. How do I handle it when it's directed at me? And the
Mm-hmm.
other is it's a very broad thing that exists in this country. And we need to figure out how we continue to chip away, right,
Yeah.
at what's happening here.
Yeah. Oh, and at the level that you're at, do you find yourself having to advocate, when you're in these spaces and you see that there aren't very many people on different levels that look like you, or not even just that look like you, but as you mentioned before, sexual orientation, things like that. Do you find yourself being one of the few people that has to raise a hand and say, wait a minute, we look at this org chart and it's all white men, where are the women? Where are the queer people? So on and so forth. Is that something that you find yourself doing often?
It is a role that I play and that I'm happy to play.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and my hope is over time, more and more people will actually play that role.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget. I was sitting up in my first public board. So this is a long time ago. First
Okay.
public board, and at the time, I think of this meeting, I may have been the only female in the rooms. I was definitely the only Black person. And we're doing succession planning. So the management puts up the chart, right, the depth chart,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it has different titles, CFO, this, and it shows here's who in line, etc. But everything is initial dot last name.
Okay.
And I'm looking at this chart. And I'm looking around like, is this what they do every year?
Mm-hmm.
Initial dot last name. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
who's female. You don't know who's male. You don't know what ethnicity people are. I have no idea looking at this chart what the diversity of the organization looks like at all.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, and people are just kind of going on. And so, raise my hand.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm new. I don't know everybody. Can you tell me who are the women on the chart?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. And they go and start to circle. Okay. And then they try to go on and say, oh, no, excuse me. Who are the Hispanics on the chart? Oh, thank you. Who are the Asians? I mean, literally, it's like one by one by one. I asked, guess what? Next year, all laid out, right?
Gotcha.
All laid out.
Yeah.
And the numbers started improving.
Yeah.
So, yes, I absolutely use that.
Gotcha. I want to take a step back and talk about confidence in negotiation because at one point in your career, you realized that you weren't getting the pay that you deserved, and if I have the story right, you were entertaining other offers or at least one other offer and brought that back to IBM in order to kind of get that push to get that corrected. Excuse me. So again, in this part of the story, you're still relatively young. And that was kind of a risk to take. It could go either way. And you were definitely invested in IBM. So you wanted to stay there, but you realized that you weren't getting your worth, right? So I guess, two part, what was that decision like, to say, what, this is what I'm worth. I'm going to make this move in order to get it. And I guess number two, what are kind of your tips to negotiation?
All right. So let me tell you, I kind of got lucky out of necessity in learning
Okay.
this whole negotiation thing. So when I was in college, and I got my first job offer, right? The job offer I wanted from IBM. I want to work for IBM. I get that offer. And I'm not even going to remember. The numbers are going to sound so small because of how old I am. Let's say the number was $25,000 a year.
Okay.
Okay. Um, but I had done my budget. All right. How much I need? This, the whole bit. Because I was already engaged and I was planning to get married and we wanted to have children and the whole bit, right? So all this stuff. So I was like, here's how much money I need to make. And it was more than $25,000 a year. And so I went back and I said, I think it was just, I only needed like $2,000 more. When I say, I mean, it wasn't even a lot. Okay. So I went back to IBM. They made me the offer. And so I had the conversation. I said, listen, thank you so much for the offer. IBM is a company I want to work for,
Right.
right? This is the job I absolutely want. I said, but the offer doesn't match the budget requirements that I've got. And I would really appreciate it if you would consider taking that to $27,000 a year. I said, now I realized, and what I did was it was not a necessity. I'm like, no, this is what I need. And so I said, listen, I still want to work here.
Right.
Okay. I still want to work here. But it would make it so much better for me to be focused, to be blah, blah, blah. I mean, I practiced this whole thing. How am I going to go ask for this extra?
Right.
Anyway, the raise came back and it was actually more than 27,000.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. So after that, I always ask for more money.
Okay.
And I tell people all the time, here's the worst that can happen.
They'll say
They'll
no.
say no.
Mm-hmm.
You're right back where you were anyway. There,
Right.
there's like zero risk. They ask them the right way. You don't walk in and say, listen, right? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, no. The key is to create an environment in which the person that you are negotiating with wants to help you,
Okay.
right? Create an environment in which they believe that by helping you, they're
Mm-hmm.
helping them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the dynamic. You don't want it to be a dynamic where you win, they lose. People are
Yes.
going to fight that tooth and nail, right? Nobody wants to be in that position. And then even when you get done, they don't feel good about it. And you create this environment where you're already starting on a bad foot.
Right.
All right. So that's the key with negotiations. You want to create an environment in which people want to help you. And two, a situation in which by helping you, they're helping themselves. Let me give you another example on negotiation.
Okay.
Much later in my career,
Okay.
I am negotiating with a company. I'm living in Dallas, Texas. The company's in San Francisco Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm negotiating with this company to join the company. And we're now at the point where they want me. All right. And we've negotiated salary, bonus structure, org, et cetera. And by the way, they wanted me to hire me as the head of sales. And I said, I will be the chief, I'll be the EVP of sales if you also give me marketing
Marketing. Mm-hmm.
because you told me you wanted blah, blah, blah. So I wanted all of it. So, okay. So now they redid the job description. They gave me both. Great. So, I mean, I was negotiating all the way. Now they think they're done. And I said, there's just one more thing. You've told me that speed is really important. We need to grow, our sales of lines, right? Quickly because of where we are, blah, 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 da, da. And you've told me that timing is really, really sensitive. I said, so I want you to also enable me to hire my existing assistant. She knows me. She knows the
Mm-hmm.
process. I'll hit the ground running. But what that means is I need you to move her and her family to California,
Mm-hmm.
right? But this is what you will get for that. And guess what? They did.
Mm-hmm.
So ask. The
Yeah.
worst that can happen is they say no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. Got it. And so I guess segue, still talking about negotiation, but also talking about family. So undoubtedly, one of the heroes in the story is Scotty, right?
Yeah.
And
And
so,
by the way, just a side note,
mhm.
today would have been his birthday.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. How was that for you?
Special day. So, I'm doing okay. It's an emotional day. It's an
Okay.
emotional.
Are you okay to talk about Scotty a
I
bit?
am. I
Oh,
absolutely am.
okay. So Scotty, your husband, he, in some ways, to some people, was a unicorn of sorts. And I'll let you kind of speak to whether or not you agree with that based on your experience in talking to other women. But, by far your biggest cheerleader, you know, um, he is someone who was able to put pride and ego aside to do what was best for his wife, to do what was best for his family early on, just being a person that knew what you wanted. You approached him to talk about what the future would look like, for you guys. And someone was going to be the one to take care of the children at home once you had children. And it wasn't going to be you. So I guess let's start there. Do you see, Scotty as being a unicorn amongst men based on your experience and talking to other women? Like, what's your view on that?
Oh yeah, Scotty was very rare. The good news
Okay.
is he's not a unicorn, meaning
Okay.
I've met other men, other women who have men in their lives that have felt like I felt about Scotty. So he's not the only one, but he's really, really rare. He's like
Yeah.
he's like the white leopard, the all white leopard, right? The one that has no spots, that has no color, right? They happen every once in a while, but not real common. But yes, he
Yeah.
was amazing.
Wow. And so, like I said, he was definitely, a big cheerleader for you, gave you a lot of encouragement. Is there one piece of encouragement or moment in that vein that sticks out to you the most where you really needed, a good word or some advice that, that he gave you that still sticks with you today?
Oh my gosh, there were so many. Um, so I'll share one early in career, maybe one late. So one early in the career was I was a salesperson. I started out
Hmm.
selling for IBM because that was the path I felt to get to CEO. And I had this major deal that I'd won, and all the executives have been in to meet with my customer. Everybody's all excited, glad handing. I mean, this is like multi-million-dollar 5-year deal. This is huge.
Hmm.
Well, the CEO calls me up and tells me, they've changed their mind. They're not going to buy it. It was point of sale systems for Rite Aid Corporation. They're just going to invest in their own point of sale company. It's like, what? What? I now have to go back and tell everyone that this deal that was done, the equipment that is actually on order and shipping in 30 days, right, is not going to happen. Which means not only am I going to miss my number, my boss is probably going to miss their number. Everybody, I mean, it's awful, right? You go back, you tell people, it's almost like I'm in mourning. Oh, Shellye, I heard, right? Oh my God, right? It's just terrible. Everybody's lost reviews. It's awful. So I come home probably 3 days later and I'm still dragging, right? And Scotty's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, well, what do you think's wrong? I mean, this whole writing thing blew up. I've got this, I've got that, I've got that. And he said, Shellye, mourning period is over.
Hmm.
He said, you are the same person you were 4 days ago before you got this news. This doesn't change who you are.
Right.
And it was like, it was then that I learned that experiencing a failure only makes you a failure if you don't move on and learn from it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
move on and learn from it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have failures. It happens. The
Yeah.
key is what you do after the failure. That's what defines you, not the failure in and of itself. So
Yeah.
that was a big one.
Hmm.
Um, and probably the second one is when I came home. I'm finally CEO of the company I want to be CEO of, etc.
Right.
We spent 4 or 5 years getting this company on its feet, growing. We're doing well, getting recognized, and then 2008 happens, the market crashes, and we're just like, oh my God. Um, and the only way I can see how we scrape through this is for team members to take pay cuts,
Hmm.
and that includes me. And I come home and say to Scotty, so what do you think if I don't pay myself for a year?
Hmm.
And I'm the only breadwinner. So that means we have to live off savings and credit if that's what's required, right? For a year.
Hmm.
So a lot of people forget, men, women, whatever, be kind of like, what are you talking about? Right.
Right.
But no, Scotty was like, is this really the only choice? And I said, it really is the only choice. It's this or blah, 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 blah. And he said, okay. He said, I was poor before, I can be poor again.
Hmm.
I mean, OMG. So yeah,
Yeah.
I just had an amazing husband.
Yeah. So two things there. First, as far as the first point, I absolutely agree with that point on failure. It's something that I've embraced more and more lately because sometimes making mistakes or failing, quote unquote, it can be exciting because it gives you the opportunity to learn. It gives you the opportunity to get better the next time. And that can be really, really exciting. So I completely agree with that. And also the part where you said that the morning is over, I'm big on that. So big on that. I'll give myself a day to be upset about it. And then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, what are we going to do now? So completely agree with that. On the second point, I wanted to ask you about that as well in terms of your communication and decision making, because especially with the last laps that you guys had together, you made a lot of decisions in terms of, career moves, physically moving from one state to the next. There's a lot of communication, a lot of decision making. Did you guys have a specific method to your communication? Like, okay, if we have to make a tough decision, this is how we approach it?
It was interesting, Daryl. We didn't take them one at a time.
Okay.
You know, I was a big believer that we needed to have a common vision for
Mm-hmm.
what our life would be. Just like in companies, right? You create a vision. Here's what we're trying to do. Why do you do that? So that everybody can make daily decisions that's consistent with getting us in that track, right? If we don't have a common vision, then, and if you have to negotiate therefore every single decision, your company can't get anything done well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to be in every single decision.
Yeah.
So Scotty and I spent time before we even got married, talking about what did we want out of life? What did we want out of life? So the moving, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, it wasn't like every time it was, okay, this is a big decision. Do we move? Do we not move? It
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't. Because if I wanted to be CEO, I'd done the work. Most
Right.
CEOs, most people who became CEOs had to move. They
Right.
relocated. Okay. And so we talked about that.
Right.
And therefore, when the opportunity happened, I'd come home and say, okay, I've got the job I was interviewing for. It means we're going so and so. Okay, when do we move?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and sometimes it was, okay, let's let the kids finish school. I'll go, you guys join. But it was never a debate on, oh, should you take the job because of moving, right?
Yeah.
The debates were, is this the right job, right? To go after, to line up for where it is we're trying to go.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to to actually spend time with your life partner to talk about what does the future look like. Because honestly, I think one of the reasons why you see a lot of divorces at very predictable times, a few years after the kids come, right? Shortly after retirement or
Mm-hmm.
retirement periods, et cetera, is because people haven't agreed on what it's going to look like. And all of a sudden it happens and it looks like something that, well, this isn't what I signed up for,
Yeah.
right? I thought it was going to be something different. And so spend the time, talk about what it looks like. And that's true in terms of life, what you want for your kids. If you want kids, the more you, I believe, the more you talk about what that future is that
Mm-hmm.
you are striving for and trying to create, the easier the day-to-day decisions become.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, you mentioned kids. And so I wanted to talk a bit about your relationship with your children because being a mom and being an executive, it can be difficult at times because at times there can be somewhat of a guilt, because you focus so much on your career and you had to make certain choices. Let's not say sacrifices, of course. So you had to make certain choices that impacted your children as well. And so I know I've referenced it earlier, but I just want to read quickly a part of that passage where you talk about sacrifices and choices. So you say, as much as I don't like the phrase work life balance, I don't like when people talk about sacrificing one part of their lives for another. To me, the word sacrifice implies a sense of loss that engenders guilt. And you go on to say, let's see, like mom, I believe in making choices, not sacrifices. Choices I own, no one else to blame, no guilt placed. And so there's a part in the book where you talk about where you were, the family was living in Dallas, I believe, and you were commuting to San Francisco, right? And you did that in order to honor a commitment that you made to your daughter that you wouldn't move again, I guess, before she graduated high school. Did I get that correct? And
Yeah.
so that set up an interesting and really sweet connection that yourself and your daughter developed through this arrangement that you guys made. So I guess with that being the frame, I wanted you, if you could, to talk a little bit about your relationship with your children because I think it can be really encouraging to mothers to know that it can be done. You can maintain a tight connection with your children, still nurture them, still maintain that relationship, and achieve your goals from a professional standpoint.
hmm Yeah. So, what I'll tell you is it's all about intention.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that every relationship is the same, right? There is no way that if you are working full time, that you are going to be spending the same number of hours, for instance, with your children, That's someone who is not
Right.
working. Okay. So that's just, okay. So the relationship may be a different relationship, right? But it's a relationship and it's about just trying to be intentional. And I try to be intentional. Part of the reason that I wanted to marry a man who would be willing to actually be flexible and be the primary lead, because I knew that given what I wanted to do, I was going to be working, I was going to be traveling. It was a lot. And I want to make sure that one of us was there, right? Because we saw it as a team. Um, and with regards to, communications and talking and the whole bit, was I perfect? No,
Mm-hmm.
no. We're all learning on the job as parents. I mean, we are all learning on the job as parents, and we are doing the best that we can do. And the key is, if we feel that we did the best that we could do based on what we knew, right? And when we did, then we can look at ourselves in the eye and say, listen, I did the best that I could do. Was I perfect? No. There's not
Mm-hmm.
one perfect parent out there. Not
Mm-hmm.
one. All right. By definition, we're learning on the job.
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so anyway, so that part says, so let yourself off the hook. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect but you.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
that is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
I recently had a conversation. I have a teenager. He's 13 years old, and so I was telling him. I said, "Look, son, I've never raised a teenager before, so so you have to give me a little grace as we try certain things out because I don't know how this is going to how partly I don't know partly how this is going to work out. So so give me a little grace here. So that's really big. We definitely have to give ourselves grace. We have to be patient with ourselves and just do the best that we can. Make the decisions that we feel are best, in our family's best interest. And then also, we do have personal goals as well that we do have the right to to pursue. So
Mhm.
that's really really important. I asked you earlier if you believed you got your tenacity from your mother. I'm sorry, from your father, and you said that it was both your father and your mother. Excuse me. So when it comes to your children, what do you think it is that you passed on to them? Not even just one thing. What are some qualities that you believe came directly from you?
Oh my goodness. The importance of family,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to lead and to be a leader, um, taking risks, believing ultimately in yourself, and gosh, what else? They can both cook.
Awesome. 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 So let me ask you this, and I know we're going to close soon, but you decided very early that you were going to pursue this journey of, becoming a CEO. So I guess my question for you is, what about the reality of being a CEO would surprise the teenage? I think you were maybe around 16, 17 at the time. What about being a CEO would actually surprise the young, ambitious Shellye?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, I decided to become a CEO because my guidance counselor told me that running a club was like running a business.
Mm-hmm.
That was a stretch. I'm glad she said that. But it was definitely a stretch. It's so much more. It is so
Mm-hmm.
much more. So that would be one. Two would probably be not just the knowledge that you need, the education that you need. Because when you're young and you're planning, it's like, okay, let me education, knowledge, education. But there's a big emotional piece, to it as well. And you carry a lot of weight on
Mm-hmm.
your shoulders. Um, and at the end of the day, you can't just go home and leave it to somebody else
Mm-hmm.
or anybody else, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so those are the things that would surprise them.
Gotcha. And so I guess as we close, I wanted to ask you about healing. Another thing that my therapist says that I love, and really blew my mind the first time he said it to me, was that, or is that, we're every age that we've ever been. And so, inside of all of us, there are all of the experiences that we've ever had. So, inside of me, there's that 12-year-old Daryl that went through this with his family or this in school. And, to be quite frank, you went through some things as a child, dealing with bullies and physically, you know, being assaulted. And guys, you can read all of this in the book. You know, I don't want to give it all away. But what has healing looked like for you? Again, as we talk about Mental Health Awareness Month, you know, we do have to heal from the things that we've experienced. And of course, you've gone on to accomplish all these great things. But at the same time, oftentimes those parts of us still go without being healed. So you mentioned that, you know, you've had a psychologist. You know, what has healing looked like for you as it pertains to those things that you experienced throughout your life?
No, so listen, it's a really good question. You know, what I would tell you is, one of the reasons I believe that I worked so hard to achieve some of the very lofty and large goals I set for myself is I just wanted people to respect me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And where did that come from? That came from that little girl. That little girl who wasn't getting any respect from anybody. So that's been a big driver for me, you know, all the way through. And same thing with wanting to be a good person and wanting to be liked, right? Because I definitely have that too. And I point that right back to that little girl. You know, I was the one who wasn't invited to the birthday parties, right? And went this and all that kind of. So therefore, I wanted to be, you know, the person that people liked. I wanted to be a good friend, right? I wanted to be a good employee. I wanted to be, it was all about, you know, you used to tell people I wanted to be good enough it hurt, right?
Yeah.
And all those things I think are related. So getting to the point where I actually had the confidence that I faked for so long, right? Was a key part, all right, of that overall healing. It's like, okay, I can do this.
Gotcha. So Shellye, I want to thank you for more than one reason. You know, thank you for this time that you spent with me. Also, thank you for writing this book because I gained a lot from it, you know, in reading it.
Well, you
You
have to
know,
show it. You haven't showed it, so I'm going to show it.
yes, please show it.
I know it shows up a little backwards probably, but anyway.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I'm a ebook person. I know a lot of people like the physical copies, which I do as well. I appreciate the physical copies, but what I love about ebooks is that you can go through and make your highlights, and then you have your whole list of highlights. I have so many highlights from your book, you know, so thank you so much for that. And also thank you for just overall making yourself available. You know, I see you online doing your Ask Me Anythings, you know, you're doing a book club, you know, and even the day that we met, I didn't mention this, you know, after we started recording, but guys, you know, the way that I met Shellye was in at a MetricStream event where I was serving as one of the audiovisual crew members. And so we were at lunch, myself and my friend Brian, we were standing at a cocktail table, and here comes this beautiful woman, beautiful, tall, elegant woman to come over and, you know, share space with us and, you know, share that time as she was preparing to leave to go to New York. And so just being a person that overall makes yourself available definitely isn't something to take for granted, because a lot of people don't. You know, a lot of people get to a certain place and they, you know, just kind of forget about the little people. You know, they have their own world, you know, their own secluded existence, and don't always make themselves available to people that they can definitely encourage, mentor at times, and benefit in some way. And I guess part of, you know, the benefit of your story is that your personal story is that it has caused you to continuously make yourself available, because you intend to develop connections with people. And I think that is amazing. And so for all of that, thank you so much. Is there anything that you wanted to mention as far as what you have coming up? I know that your book kind of journey has been a little different because of quarantine, but is there anything else that you want to mention as far as what you're doing right now?
Oh, thank you. You know, the big things I'll tell you, I'm trying to be very active. This period of my life is about impact and inspiration.
Okay.
So I am trying to impact and inspire people so that more people can achieve what they want to achieve out of life. Because frankly, the odds aren't in your favor for most of us. And that's okay. It's okay. The odds aren't in my favor. We play the cards we're dealt. But the good news is there's lots of strategies, tips, advice, right? Hacks. I mean, all kinds of things you can do to actually improve your odds. And that's what I'm trying to share. and trying to let people know that, hey, you can do it too, because I want more people to actually be able to share those things. So feel free to follow me on social media. I'm very active on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. And then Shellye, www.Shellye with a Y-E, S-H-E-L-L-Y, Y-E, Shellye.com. But feel free to sign up. I'm going to be doing some things around trying to figure out how to help mentor at scale. Mentoring one-on-one is very limiting. Trying to figure out other ways to do that more broadly. So if you're interested, sign up, and you'll hear more about it as things become available in the future.
Absolutely. And guys, you can pick up the book wherever books are sold. Again, it is Unapologetically Ambitious by Shellye Archambeau. Shellye, thank you again so much. Hopefully we can connect again soon.
All right.
To our audience, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay low and keep firing. Peace and love.